Karen's smug grin could have curdled the lake water. She stood on my cabin's porch like she'd already hung her tacky curtains, waving a crumpled paper she swore was a deed. The gall of Karen wasn't new to Pinewood Lake. She'd been the HOA's self-appointed queen for years, strutting around in garish floral dresses, her voice a megaphone of complaints about untrimmed hedges or unsightly mailboxes. But this? Claiming my family's cabina weathered, cedar-sided haven my grandfather built in '62 was a new low, even for her. The cabin wasn't just property. It was where I scattered Dad's ashes, where my kids learned to fish, where I escaped the city's grind. Karen didn't care. To her, it was another notch in her HOA empire. It started 3 months ago when I got a letter from the Pinewood Lake HOA signed by Karen herself, claiming my cabin violated some obscure bylaw about unused structures. Bull. I'd been up every summer, fixing the roof, repainting the deck. The letter demanded I relinquish the cabin to the HOA for community use. Translation: Karen wanted it for her precious clubhouse, a pet project she'd been yammering about since she bullied her way into the HOA presidency. I ignored it, thinking she'd back off. Big mistake. By July, Karen escalated. She showed up at the cabin with a locksmith, 2 HOA lackeys, and that fake deed, claiming she'd purchased the property from a lapsed tax sale. The audacity made my blood boil. I was there that day, thankfully, splitting firewood with my neighbor Tom, a grizzled retiree who'd seen Karen's antics before. "She's got no claim, Ellie," Tom muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "That paper's as real as her charm." I stormed up to the porch, demanding answers. Karen just smirked, her chins wobbling as she waved the deed like a royal decree. "This is HOA property now, Eleanor," she said, my name dripping with disdain. "You're trespassing." I could have slapped her, but I'm not that person. Instead, I called Sarah, my other neighbor, a no-nonsense lawyer who'd clashed with Karen over her own illegal garden shed. Sarah arrived in minutes, her eyes narrowing at Karen's smug face. "You're forging documents now?" Sarah snapped, snatching the deed. Karen's lackeys shifted nervously, but she didn't flinch. "Prove it," she taunted. "Oh, we would." The next week was a blur of fury and paperwork. Sarah helped me dig into county records, and surprised there was no tax sale. The cabin was fully paid, deeded to me since Dad passed. Karen's deed was a shoddy fake, typed in Comic Sans, for God's sake. We filed a property suit, citing fraud and trespassing. Karen laughed it off at the HOA meeting, telling everyone I was a hysterical city girl who didn't belong. She even rallied her cronies to paint me as the villain, claiming I was hoarding the cabin from the community. The nerve. But Pinewood Lake wasn't all Karen's puppets. Tom and Sarah rallied neighbors who'd had enough of her reign. Old Mrs. Jenkins, who Karen once fined for feeding ducks, brought us coffee and stories of Karen's past scams. Mike, the bait shop owner, offered to testify about Karen's bullying. The community was fracturing, and Karen's smugness started to crack. She doubled down, though, turning the cabin into her clubhouse, overnight stringing up tacky streamers, hauling in folding chairs, even hosting a bingo night on my porch. I saw red. The court date came in August, a sweltering day that matched the tension. Karen's face went from smug to ashen. She stammered, "This is outrageous. That cabin's for the community." The judge wasn't having it. "You're lucky I'm not charging you with fraud," she snapped. I wanted to cheer, but I held it together, catching Sarah's triumphant glance. Tom, in the back, gave a quiet thumbs up. Eviction day was poetic. The sheriff, a no-nonsense guy named Daniels, showed up with the papers. Karen was still at the cabin, her clubhouse, now a mess of spilled punch and crumpled streamers. She screamed about injustice as Daniels handed her the notice. Her lackeys scattered like roaches. I stood with Tom and Sarah, watching as Karen loaded her junk into a rented van, her face twisted in defeat. The cabin was mine again, but the victory wasn't just about property. It was about standing up to a bully who thought she could steamroll everyone. The aftermath wasn't pretty for Karen. The HOA voted her out the next week, her clubhouse dreams dead. Neighbors started talking openly about her scams, fake fines, rigged elections. Some even pushed for a fraud investigation. Karen moved out of Pinewood Lake by fall, her tail between her legs. I heard she's living in a condo somewhere, probably terrorizing a new HOA. Good riddance. I spent the next weekend at the cabin, scrubbing away every trace of Karen's clubhouse. Tom helped me repaint the porch, and Sarah brought her kids over for a barbecue. The lake sparkled under the autumn sun, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. The cabin wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of fighting for what's right, of community over ego. Karen thought she could take it with a forged paper and a sneer, but she underestimated us. She underestimated me. As I sat on the porch that evening, sipping coffee and watching the sunset, I thought about Dad. He'd built this place with his hands, his heart. Karen's greed couldn't touch that. Nothing could. The lake whispered its quiet approval, and I smiled, knowing we'd won more than a lawsuit. We'd reclaimed our home. The end.